forgot to add myself to the stage. You can dock me $5 for that one, although you got a nice look at my background. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mike the New Haven podcast. I'll be honest, I don't have my guest here right now. I don't know. I did send the link over and everything's queued up to go on that front. Just kind of waiting to see if that individual logs on. It should be Pete Brazil for an interview about his time, of course, in the New York City Transit Police and the NYPD. Was also an MP, so that should be pretty interesting if we're able to get him. But right now we don't have them, so just waiting to see what shakes out with that. But in the meantime, I'll just spitball with you guys. I didn't want to keep you guys waiting. If he shows great, we'll go into it. We'll have a discussion about his career. But if not, you can spend a little bit of time with me. I got nothing but time for you guys. Hi, John Costello, Joe Maliga, Michelina Serino, as well as Dawn Marie. She says she'll be listening and cooking at the same time, which I appreciate. So just to catch you up in the meantime before he signs on, and like I said, we'll see if he does. If he doesn't, it's okay. Tap him before you just kind of learn to roll with it. Michelina says she has pizza, no cooking here, and that's fine. Pizza's good too. We all like pizza, at least most of us do. And if you don't, something's wrong with you. But if you haven't checked out the previous episodes, it was interesting because we kind of went away a little bit from our first responder format. I often say that the show is 80% first responders, and then the other 20% is kind of news interviews, sports interviews, and just sometimes something different. Where we did that with Paul DeMatteis, who worked a lot with law enforcement, collaborated a lot with law enforcement, but for the most part was somebody who worked in the private sector. And he was somebody that was not directly involved with law enforcement in terms of having served himself, but contributed a lot on the global security side and helped stop a terrorist threat in 2004. Then we had Carrie Barrett, former reporter. She used to be primarily, well, in a slew of different markets. But if you are familiar with the tri-state area, if you live in the tri-state area, and you watch Channel 4, WANBC, as the late, great Don Imus used to say, she was on WNBC, Channel 4, from 2015 to 19 before she stepped away and went into consulting. So interesting woman, because I had grown up watching her. I remember her vividly from Channel 4. So I'm like, crap, let me reach out and try to get her on the show. And I'm glad I did, because, that episode was a fun one. And of course, the previous one with DeMatteis was good too. We had an FDNY show, Best the Bravest, interviews with the FDNY's elite, which broke the record for longest show, Mike Roy, Lieutenant, and before that, an ESU show. So lately with the podcast, we're doing well, which is good. It's a lot of fun to do. We have some good guests cooked up in the upcoming months too. We're going to take this to June and then take a little summer break, and I'll expand more as we get closer. But we got at least 3 months of shows coming up, which should really carry us. And a big part of that is you guys. And we recently crossed the 2,200 subscribers milestone. I think the exact count is 2,207 subscribers. And I will pull up. And hi, Joe Maliga. I see you in the chat. I shouted you out earlier. I'll shout you out again. We surpassed, or we got a little bit to go to get to 400,000 total views for the YouTube channel, which I am very excited about as well. Because listen, when you're at something for a long time, you don't know if you're going to have staying power per se. But I think what's been proven is that we do have staying power. And the reason why I say we is because, again, as I've said a million times over, long day at work, is if you have a great audience, that's going to carry you through. It really is going to be your lifeline. And this audience has been my lifeline. We get a good amount of people live. We get a lot of people in the replay. But as I was telling Patrice Polzer earlier on LinkedIn, and shout out to Patrice if she's watching, I have a very loyal 2,207. I don't have 1 million followers. I don't have 500,000 subscribers or anything like that. But with an audience of 500,000 or 1 million, you're not going to have naturally all 500K or all 1 million people watching you at once. At least most people don't. But, for me, if you have a smaller audience, the beauty of a smaller audience is everybody, or just about everybody, and that smaller audience is watching or listening. So, like I said, where we stand right now, it's about 11 after 7. This is either going to be Pete Brazil, and this is just kind of serve as an opening monologue until he signs on, or this is just going to be, I guess a Mike Colón Power Hour, a spitballing session. So in the meantime, until he signs on, feel free to throw a question in the chat, and not the "Have you ever delivered a baby?" question, Joe, because I haven't. Not for me, but not for Pete, I should say, but for me, if you got one, let's talk a little bit. In the meantime, until he signs on. Excuse me. Taking a little swig of water. And let's see, who do we got coming up? for these next few shows. I'm going to tell you because I double booked like an idiot. We may have 3 shows next week, which is a rarity. I try not to do 3 shows just because you fatigue yourself that way. 2 shows kind of keeps you fresh. But I used to do 3 shows a week back then, but I kind of got away from that format. But because I double booked next Wednesday like a complete moron, I realized, oh my goodness, I should really change that. So we may have 3 shows next week, where Tuesday may be Mary Lowry, Mary Lowry Model. I think I'm not sure which of the two is her maiden name or married name, but nevertheless, her first name is Mary. And what makes her significant is she is the first woman in NYPD history to have gone into the aviation unit. So that will be fun if I could speak with her. We got Rich Rotans in all likelihood for March 27th, this Wednesday. Best of the Bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. And we're Tales from the Boom Room is going to make its return next Friday. Tales from the Boom Room has not been done since last July. It's almost been a whole year, 8 months since we did a Tales from the Boom Room show, but that should be returning with Billy Neese next Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, if you can join us for that. The book he's talking about, thank you, Joe, for that question, is Good Folks Mad City, Life on the Edge in the FDNY and NYPD. I'm targeting, I don't have an exact date for it, but I'm targeting late spring, early summer, ideally, because I guess I can just dive into it now. I am slated to, we're booked just about for the next couple of months, and that should take us to about June 28th. And then after June 28th, I'm going to take a summer hiatus, which I am not going to do any shows at all during July and August. We're going to completely just about take that summer off. I may put out a best of, we'll see. But that's about it. We've got we'll be completely off the radar, and I'll be elsewhere, just kind of enjoying the summer. And we'll come back in September and pick up where we left off. But ideally, I can spend, Joe, that summer, doing my consulting work, doing my consulting business, and then promoting the book at the same time. So late spring, early summer, we're moving along. The transcript is coming along nicely. What I'm doing, because I want to have photos in the book too, is that everybody who's in the book, I'm having them send photos from their career or from incidents they responded to in their career, and we're loading them in. And I got a good team with me, collaborating with me on that, so we can load those photos in, and from there, what we can end up doing is kind of just working on the formatting of it and then putting out the book. And I'm thinking it'll sell pretty well. Do I think it'll make the New York Times bestseller list? I don't know. It'd be nice, but do I think with the networking community I've been fortunate enough to build, it will sell well? Yeah, I think it will, and I'm excited about it. We're a couple months away, and like I said, hopefully that July and August period that I'm off from Mike to New Haven, and myself and producer Vick are enjoying our summer and kind of in that gone fishing stage, as we are going to be, right? Especially after this winter. That's when I can spend the time really hitting it hard and doing some promo for this thing. So thank you for asking. And John Costello, yeah, you have delivered a few, and I got your book on Commissioner Ray Kelly, who I really want to get on this show still. And then I will tell you, it bothered me immensely, John. Let me take another swig of water. Hold on. That I didn't get that interview because a little inside baseball. Ray was supposed to come on last July. So I had booked the show. I had spoken with his aide or his secretary. I don't know her exact title, but she's basically his assistant. And I said, this is going to be a live show, blah, 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 blah. And I communicated every aspect. You guys know me. I'm very detail-oriented. I don't leave anything left to chance. I don't leave anything unsaid. So I explained from top to bottom, this is what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And some things, without going into an excessive amount of detail, I guess must have gotten lost in translation. And he was not told certain things that he should have been told. And hi, Garrett. Good to see you. And unfortunately, the interview fell through in the 11th hour. After I had promoted it. I put it out on Facebook. He was coming out. I put it out on Twitter. I put it out on LinkedIn, and it didn't happen. So what I ended up doing is interviewing Jerry Fitzpatrick for Tales from the Boom Room Profiles of the NYPD Bomb Squad. And that was a good show. I enjoyed it a lot. Jerry was awesome, but I've been working on getting that interview since, and it's been radio silence, unfortunately, which leaves me flabbergasted and, quite frankly, a bit frustrated because I've been chasing that interview for 6 years. long years of trying to get that man on my show just to essentially not have it happen. And that it leaves a very bitter taste in your mouth when you can't get a long term project like that done. Because if you talk about white whales for the Mike the New Haven podcast, I would say he is one of two. I won't tell you who the other one is. Hopefully, that person comes on someday. Some of you that are listening in the audience know who that individual is. Producer Victor certainly knows who that individual is. But as far as uh, Commissioner Kelly, that is an interview that I would want. So, Joe Garrett, always good to hear your wisdom on that other podcast. What other podcast could you be talking about, Joe? If you're just joining us, we're waiting on Pete Brazil, who's a former New York City Transit Police officer, former NYPD officer, and was also an MP, went to Kosovo, Bosnia, Iran, I believe, and Afghanistan, amongst other assignments that he had. The link was sent to him and everything. We're just waiting for him to sign on. And hopefully, he can sign on. But if he doesn't, as you guys know, when I'm kind of caught in a rock and a hard place, I'm like, you know what? Let's make the best of it. I can go out there and I could blip lap an hour with you guys. I mean, I don't mind it. Maybe I might even send a link to some of you guys in the chat. You can come on with me and spitball a bit, and we could just turn this into a Mike Colón Power Hour, if you will. But Garrett, it's very good to see you. And Garrett's a big supporter of this show as well, and of course, former guest on Getting Salty and a big supporter of theirs. And it is always great to hear his wisdom. And that was one of my favorite shows that I did. I'm not just saying that because he's in the chat. If you look at all the volumes of the best, the bravest, it's 55 of them in total. That was one that stuck out. And what I like to do with that miniseries, and what's good about that miniseries, is you try to get everybody. And Steve Kerr and I were talking about this, not the basketball player, but the former guest in the show as well, who was in New York City EMS and OEM, and also the FDNY, once the EMS merger took place, is that you get people who were on the line as firefighters, never moved up in the ranks, stayed where they were, which is more than okay. Because as I said before, you can stay a patrolman in the NYPD or a firefighter in the FDNY and have a crap ton of fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of guys do that, but I like to get them. I like to get, of course, the fire officers, the chiefs, the commissioners, because it encompasses everything with the department. And that's something that I like to do because you shed a light on different areas that people might not have known about, which is always a plus. Because, listen, that department, again, time for another water swig. My throat is so dry today. And I don't know why. It's the greatest fire department in the world, but you may not know every nook and cranny of it. And this show tries to shed as many nook and crannies as possible. And what's good about the way FDNY press handles things is that they're very open. I will tell you, it's easier to deal with them than the NYPD, and I understand why the NYPD these days is a little bit more guarded with things. I can get that. But with the New York City Fire Department, depending on who you are, and for the most part, they're pretty good, unless you're some quack and you're super controversial and you're looking to stir the pot, which you get that 2% that's going to. Depending on who you are with the FDNY, the press office is always pretty good about granting whatever you want. They're pretty much an open book. And if you want to interview active members, you can do that. There's kind of like a free reign. They're not strict over there, unless it's something like that's really towing the line, which usually the commissioner will make those appearances on Capitol Hill or on these political-oriented shows, and that's a different story. But for the most part, listen, that's how I was able to get Chief Lee. That's how I was able to get Chief Hodgins, Chief Esposito. They like to talk about what's actively going on. And when you have a department that's so transparent that way, it really does go a long way. It really does help things exponentially. Not just the retired guys, but getting the active perspective too. And, we'll continue to do more of that. I don't think I'll be reaching out to the current commissioner about things, but I don't think that'd be a very good idea given what's going on lately. And I'll just leave it at that. But, you never know what the future holds with that. Garrett, I hope you feel better. I'm sorry you're feeling bad. Hi, Dawn. Good to see you, Dawn. Again, if you're just joining us, we have a late guest. Happens. I'm not blaming anybody. Happened before. It'll happen again. You roll with the punches. Romatori, who's been on this show previously from New York One, called it tap dancing. So you're hearing my voice more than you may want to or need to. And I don't want to hear my voice this much in the Mike the New Haven podcast because I want my guest to do all the talking. But if you don't have a guest, you have to do all the talking. So that's what's happening right now. But keep throwing questions in there in the chat. We'll answer. Let's spitball for a little bit. It's the Mike Colón Power Hour. In the meantime, um, let's go into the headlines a little bit this week. Not the controversial ones, and we'll stay away from that because that just doesn't serve the show well. But lots been happening lately. Thank you, Jake. I'm trying. Lots been happening lately in the city. Trying to see, wasn't there a fire the other day? There was a crazy fire in Brooklyn. I think these two guys might have been killed before the blaze. They were saying they were dead before the blaze, where they go in. And it might have been in Park Slope. It was a pretty good fire. It was a 2-alarm box. And FDNY went out there and handled that, and unfortunately found 2 gentlemen deceased. And that was a pretty serious blaze that enveloped that apartment. And now I'm not gonna find the exact news on the fire here. What happened with that? It's a Brooklyn fire. I'm gonna type in FDNY news here because that was some box. Oh, here's another fire today from PIX. Smoke billows out of a building near the World Trade Center. That was a very eerie sight, to say the least. And that was a piece of equipment that caught fire on top of the building. And that was, I saw the image earlier from a page that chronicles the happenings of New York City EMS, particularly FDNY EMS. That was a site that, if you're a New Yorker of a certain age or just a person of a certain age, definitely triggered some unfortunate flashbacks, but nothing terrorism related, thankfully. I think it was just a piece of equipment that caught fire on top of the building. But what makes that particular box assignment interesting is that, and I don't know how you guys do it, and Garrett, you remember, especially being in Rescue, even if you were in Rescue 3 where you're not dealing with as many high rises as Manhattan has, still you're going to your fair share, especially if there's a box in Manhattan that Rescue 3 is going to, to help out, is that you're talking about a piece of equipment on top of a 60-story, yeah, I know, Garrett, you're right. And that picture certainly did. You're talking about, at least a 60-story skyscraper. To send personnel up there to get to that fire, even if it's just a piece of equipment, I wonder how that command works, because it's not like California, where during wildfires we see a plane just goes overhead, and disperses water, or a helicopter does that and disperses water. You can't do that in that part of Manhattan because it's a no-fly zone. So you kind of have to navigate that much differently than you would any other fire. And listen, can they get to it with enough time? Sure. But stretching a hose line, you're not going to stretch it from the lobby up. I'm pretty sure there's parts where you can clip in on these floors. I think that's mandatory for skyscrapers in the city, that they have to have parts where you can, stretch a hose line. It's reasonable to get there because a hose line is not going to go 70 stories up. But that's a long haul. And if you have the elevators working, it's an easier haul, but still, I wonder what the regulations are these days, because you look. And Mark Twain, standpipe operations. Mark Twain said it best, and I heard this from Paul Hashagen, still writing, who was quoting Mark Twain, and the line stuck with me. I guess Twain once said, New York City will be a real nice place if they ever finish it. And they still haven't finished it, because if you look, there's skyscrapers going up left and right in the city, and they're very stringent with the regulations and how it's supposed to be built, which is good. But you still get scenarios like this, or you get that scenario from a couple months ago when there was that crane fire and parts of the crane are falling down to the street below. Thankfully, nobody was hurt or killed in that incident. But nevertheless, you get situations like that because they just haven't stopped building, and these projects are going to continue and continue. It's a never-ending process. And it's different things. It's apartment buildings, it's office buildings, it's who knows what the heck else, but they're going up left and right. And Garrett says the engine companies carry up 2.5 hose packs in a high-rise kit. And thank God for that, because without that, especially for a building like One World Trade, which is 100 and, is it 110 stories, or might be a little bit taller than that. But listen, that's a tall building, the Empire State Building. I'm not even talking about anything terrorist related. I'm just talking about a fire that breaks out, kind of like what the original Trade Center had, like in 75, I believe. There's a fire in the Twin Towers in 75, something like that, where something just goes wrong, and it's just a general box. It's 1,776 feet tall. Jake, thanks. I knew, I had a feeling, I just didn't want to say because I wasn't sure. Would you confirm that? Thanks, John. I see you putting that in the chat too. If you get a general box in there, that is a hellacious operation. Just from a command standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, you really got to think outside the box there. No pun intended for these high rises. But they got plans in place and they do emergency training all the time, which that's good at least. That's good. Let's see. Just, you're making up for 2 and 3 hour and change guessed a little bit ago. Yeah, those were long shows. Yeah, they were good shows. Listen, I can't complain, and I just was happy to stand back and listen. But I think between those two shows, I may have spoken a combined 6 or 7 times, if that. I didn't do a lot of talking during either show, and listen, it's fine. You be a professional, you listen. That's the goal of the show. You listen to the people that you have on. You don't interrupt them. You don't do the Howard Stern interview. I think Howard Stern is one of the most overrated interviewers of all time because he doesn't shut up. That's the key of the interview. If you're not letting the person express himself or herself, you're not doing an interview. You're just giving a dissertation and inviting them to listen to it. Essentially, is how I view it. I was watching an old clip. He had Don Felder on, who, if used to be the guitarist for the Eagles back in the day, and very controversial firing in February of 2001. He didn't see eye to eye with Don Henley and Glenn Fry, and they let him go. And so he wrote a book talking about his time in the Eagles, which Henley and Fry were trying to stop, and it became a whole big to-do, became a bestseller. It's like 07, 08, well after he had left the band. And Howard has him in. Now, I had never seen this interview before. And I like Don Felder's work. I love the Eagles' work. So I'm like, you know what? Let me listen to this. Because I'd never read his book. And I agree with you, Garrett. Imus was a much better interviewer that way. And I couldn't make it's about a 40-minute interview. I couldn't make it past the first 5 minutes because I think Stern might have cut the guy off 12 times in that 5-minute span. You don't pull a lawyer where if a lawyer already knows the answer to the question, he's only asking the question for a specific legal purpose. And that works in a courtroom. It doesn't work in a natural interview setting. And Stern never learned that. So I try not to do that. That's the thing with the show. I take cues from Imus, who I loved listening to and who I missed. That was a big loss when he passed away. I take cues from other interviewers as well, which is it's simple. Just shut up. That's all you have to do. You just have to shut up and let them talk. So even if it's a 3-hour show, hey, you deal with it, and it's fine. You're happy to listen to their stories because they did a lot. Rather be on the fire side or the PD side, they did a lot, and it's an archive. And that's something that some people with the podcast or a radio show understand. I know I try to, but guys like that, or who's in Charlie Rose, they didn't. Same thing with Rose. Rose was a horrible interviewer. Horrible. I'm not just saying that because some of the stuff he got in trouble for later. I felt that way about him before he got in trouble. The same thing. He would ask you, so why are you going to the grocery store? And as you begin to answer the question, because you're out of milk and cheese. Well, if you don't shut up and let me answer the question, I will be happy to provide an answer. That's something I never want to do. Back to the standpipe thing. Matt Shirley, who is a school resource officer and also a fireman on top of that. He says, never used a standpipe on a high rise, but I have used them when I was an industrial firefighter at Caterpillar, Mapleton, Illinois foundry on runouts, cooling tunnels, stack fires, and roof ops. And I can imagine they come in handy. Even if you're not dealing with 60-foot high rises, it's still good stuff to know. So, I give credit where it's due in that regard. And I'm, we don't have high rises to that level, but we got a few 4 or 5 story. I think the highest is 7-story buildings in our district. And it's good to study because especially if we're going mutual aid to other districts, I'm talking about where I work in West Haven, Connecticut. You want to know where's what's what, knowing your district, knowing your city as a whole, and being familiar with what was there or what is there, it goes a long way. So to do that in a city of 55,000 is difficult enough. But to do that in a city of 8 million is even harder. Pete, I see you. Click the StreamYard link in your email, buddy, and you should be on shortly. We did hear from our guest. We're waiting on him. He'll come in shortly. Just spitballing here in the meantime. Jake Rickster, how about a show on these e-bike fires? If you go back, I actually touched on it extensively in my Paul Rogers interview from last summer. Yeah, last summer when he was on. He was on like last July or so. or it might have been June. I can't remember, but he was on last summer, and he talked extensively about the lithium ion battery problem. And I've seen Commissioner Kavanaugh go testifying about on Capitol Hill, which I don't know what the end game. I'm not knocking her. I'm just saying in general. I'm thinking out loud. I don't know what the end game is. Maybe legislation or something like that, as it pertains to lithium ion batteries. She's right. It's a problem, but I wonder. I wonder what the reason why I wonder what the end game is how do you enforce it? Do you enforce it through arrest? Do you enforce it through summonses? It's not easy to keep track of these things. If somebody's peddling dirt e-bikes or anything like that illegally, you could make storage rules, but it's not like you can go into every single house known to man and see if somebody's following it. That's tedious, and even if you have the money to dedicate to inspections like that, it would take up so much time and effort. So it's a difficult thing to keep track of. And I think the frustration is it's kind of like a dog chasing its tail. You don't know how to mitigate it. And that's not a knock on leadership per se. It's just, I don't think anybody really has a solution to that right now because it's such a unique thing that I think people are just learning how to mitigate it, especially in New York City as they go. And that's no fault of anybody's. It's just kind of a crisis that the city hadn't seen before. But you have people in the right places that are learning as they go, and picking up on these things, making notes of it, and hopefully you can implement some things that can make the situation a little bit more tenable and safer. But go back and watch that Paulie Rogers interview if you can, Jake, because he did talk a lot about it. I couldn't. He's like he worked in hazmat, so I had to ask him about it. And Pete Anthony says, register everyone. Hang on, let me highlight. There we go. I took it off. Register everyone who owns any type of e-bike or motorized scooter like motorcycles. Yeah, that will work. That will work. Have I made any WHFD fires lately? No, just that one. It was on Leap Day. It was on February 29th. I went to that third alarm with the guys. I have not. We were dispatched mutual aid to a car fire. Anytime there's a fire that's near a building, mutual aid gets dispatched, even if it's not extending to the building. But I wouldn't count that one as a second box that I went to because the district in question was West Shore, and the fire was just strictly a car fire in the driveway. There was no extension, thankfully, to the house. So mutual aid got canceled. So we were already there. We just kind of took a quick look, myself and Captain Roy Siebes, great guy. I was riding with him, and we just tried to see if they needed anything. They didn't, so we just kept going. The mutual aid, got canceled, but. Pete says, I believe the FDNY says 40% of calls are now e-bike fires. Yes, they are. And like I said, Pete, when you go to your email, it'll be from the Colón Report. There's a StreamYard link in there. Just click it. It should take you to the studio, and then you could sign on, and I'll do the introduction of you. We're already in the show. So since Pete will be signing on shortly, let me just take care of the ads real quick. I mentioned, getting into consulting earlier. So since I was talking about it casually, I'll just throw up the MC Media Editing Services ad real quick, and then we'll do Joe Murray too. Need advice on how to start your podcast? Frustrated with the editing process? Can't find a voiceover guy? Hi, I'm Mike Colón, and I'm here to help. I'm the owner and founder of MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company for all things media, where I can offer you consulting advice on how to get started, and once you get started, editing, as well as voiceover work, all for a very reasonable price. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at 917-781-6189 or the email that you see listed here. I'm always available, and I'm always willing to help. Again, 917-781-6189. Why go to some giant consulting firm that's going to charge you an arm and a leg when you can just come to me? If you want to be stress-free, the way to go is to call MC. MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company. Pete actually says he just got off the plane, so that's fine. Pete, if you can, don't worry. But if you can, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. I don't want you rushing. Take your time. I hope you had a good trip. So we'll just continue. We're doing all right here, with the Mike Colón Power Hour. So let's just get to Joe Murray real quick, and we'll keep spitballing. If you're ever caught on the wrong end of the law, call Joe Murray. Joe's a retired NYPD police officer turned criminal defense attorney. With 15 years of experience in the NYPD from 1987 until 2002, he parlayed a successful career in the NYPD into an equally successful career as a criminal defense attorney. His website is jmurray-law.com, where you can reach him at 646-838-1702, or just email him at joe@jmurray-law.com. So I can, and Garrett is cool. I do enjoy it. I can Pete, I see your message. I'm going to reply to it right now so it shoots to the top of your inbox. I'll tell you the story in full. I got into it a bit on getting salty, but I'll tell you the story in full from my perspective. I'm not going to go too deep into things I shouldn't be speaking out of school on because, it's naturally, it's still under investigation and whatnot. But as far as just going there, um, the way that went down was I was getting ready to leave for the day because this came in for context. My schedule at the West Haven Fire Department is a pretty good one, and that I'm there Tuesday through Thursday 9 to 4, and then Friday 10 to 2. So it's a part-time job. It's a 25-hour job, which I enjoy doing. So Fridays I get out early. Tuesday through Thursday I'm there 9 to 4. But I like to stay extra because when you enjoy that job, I like staying a little bit extra after I get off the clock and spitballing with the guys. So I was on the phone with my mom, and she's like, "Hey, can you stop by? Are you getting ready to leave?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna pack up in a couple minutes." It was about 5 minutes to 4, and she says, "All right, well then just stop by the store real quick and get me a couple things." I said, "Sure, you got it." So I'm packing up, and I kid you not, I'm going to grab my jacket, just to put it on and head on home. When the dispatcher comes over, and as I mentioned before, we are not one fire department in West Haven. We are 3 districts. That's just the way it's been since the town's inception. So we are where I work, we are known as the Center District or First District. Then there is the Allentown District, and then there is the West Shore District. But we all go mutual aid to each other's boxes, and because we're right there, and there's a good working relationship. There isn't any cat and dog fighting or anything like that, which is good. So we help each other out. And came in, dispatcher, Richie the Rag, legend in our city, says Allentown box alarm, truck 22, engine 25, and rescue 27, one of our ambulances, mutual aid. So, there's that rush, right? And I have to learn to walk in these situations and not run. But I got excited. So I'm like, oh, and I went and I grabbed my camera equipment because my exact job is to not only do social media for the department, but document our training, and on box alarms in which I'm present, document our operations there for internal review. So I grabbed my equipment as fast as I could, and I go, roaring down the hallway from where my office is. And Frank Payne, who's our most senior guy on the job, in September, he'll have 28 years on the job, another legend. I almost run into the poor guy's shoulder, which wouldn't have ended good for me because he's a big man, a big, strong man. And I am a little guy. I'm 5'8", 130 pounds. So that would not have gone very well for yours truly. But he's there. He's like, Jesus. I'm like, sorry, Frank. So I go, roaring down the staircase to get to the apparatus floor, and he's laughing, shaking his head. He's like, don't worry, Mike. You ain't getting in there before me. So, I didn't even have to ask my captain, Andy Bennett, who I love. A great guy, one of many great fire officers we have at our department. If I had to hop on, he just pointed it to our truck 22, and he's like, get on. So I did, and I'm with him, Florent Severin, another great guy, hilarious guy, Frank, and Captain Bennett. Now, I had been on box alarm calls before where it wasn't really a box alarm, if you will. It got called in as one, but it was just a whole big nothing burger. There was one literally a couple months ago where it came in as a possible electrical fire, but it just turned out to be a panel that short circuited. Another one came in where a woman, and I can understand why she called the fire department for this, because if I saw this, I would think my house was on fire too. I guess her furnace was old and it started kind of dispersing white smoke. So she goes in the basement. She doesn't know what's going on. She thinks her basement's on fire. So she called the fire department. But it was just her furnace was old and nothing was out of whack, and her house was fine, thankfully. So those were the 2 box alarms I've been on that weren't really boxes. And it's a letdown. Not that you want people's stuff to be burning, but you're thinking, oh man, I'm going to capture the guys at work. This is what it's all about. You're all hopped up, and then it's that letdown. You understand what I'm talking about. This was not that. So our training captain, who I report directly to, Jake Urban, another just fabulous guy. It's great to have a job where you genuinely enjoy everyone you work with, and that's my case. In West Haven, he was in the area handling an unrelated matter when he heard the call. So he was only a few blocks away, and he put over the radio that he was responding. We went, and since he was first on scene, he called it a working fire. So now your blood level and your adrenaline level goes from here, which is already pretty high up, to all the way up here, because now you know, all right, this is going to be work. This is a legitimate this is a legitimate box. Don't worry, Pete. Take your time. And like I said, if you can't tonight, we'll reschedule for another day. I see your message in the chat. It's a legitimate box, and it's a working fire. And so, now I'm really pumped up, and you're just trying to pace yourself because it's my first one. We were coming down a hill on the way to the job, and that's when you could see the smoke. And I'm like, whew, and it's going pretty good from the Charlie side, which, for those of you not familiar with fire service uh, word expressions, word expressions, terminology. That's the word I'm looking for. I had a brain fart there for a second. That means it's the rear of the house, like the back end of the house, at least in most cases. Sometimes the rear can be, depending on the makeup of the house. In this case, it was a 2-story apartment building. So it was coming from the rear. And yeah, don't worry, Pete. It's fine. Well, we'll do real quick before I continue with the story. Is Pete? I will reach out to you. My number's in the description of this episode. Just I'm on the air right now. Obviously, text me. I'll save your number, and I'll give you a call. And tomorrow, let's try to do a dry run. That way, we can reschedule, and I can put you on. It's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll work through the technical issues tomorrow. Hopefully, if you got some time. But just text me 917-781-6189. So, as I was saying, we pull up, second due truck on the box. It's not our district, so naturally the Allentown district, their truck was there first. It's their box, their first due, and really good smoke condition. And there's some heavy fire coming out of the back end. And mind you, the fire's just in one room, but it's enveloping a pretty good portion of the back of the house. So I just watched the guys go to work. And you got many different apparatus coming in, but guys just shot up right to the roof. Guys stretched the line in, and within 20 minutes, the fire was knocked down. And the captain I reported to, there's an instance of always being ready, right? He was handling something completely unrelated, and he gets thrust into this position where he has to be in command as the training captain, and under circumstances where things are moving a million miles a minute. He did a fantastic job, and I'm not just saying that because he's my boss and my pal, but I really can't say enough good things about how he handled that. And all the guys did a great job with that. Captain Bennett, maneuvered that to perfection. Our engine, we have 2 stations in our district. So engine 25, which came in on the first alarm assignment, and more companies came in as it went to a second, as it went to a third. But on the first alarm assignment, that engine, due to their proximity to the box, got there first as the first due engine and went to work. And that crew was Adam Sedanowitz, Dave Anilowski, Rich Decker, and Lieutenant Adrian Figueroa. And again, Sedanowitz, Anilowski, and Decker, 3 guys who know what they're doing. Lieutenant Figueroa, you're talking about a guy with 19 years worth of experience. Great fire officer, just great fireman, real good fireman, real good leader. Calm guy, not one to get too excited, not one to yell and scream, just one that calmly give orders and let the guys know what they got to do and where they got to be. And I just saw him, doing exactly as he always does. Went in, wham, bam, no muss, no fuss. And him and those 3 guys took care of business, and as the first due engine, did a great job. And I was running back and forth, getting as many pictures as I could of this incident, because my function is I'm not just some random journalist coming in from somewhere else, like, for the New Haven Register or anything like that. I'm working in an official capacity for the department. So I'm documenting all of this for us. And really just a lot of fast moving parts, from aerial operations to stretching a line in the first floor to, of course, just making sure, medical aid is being rendered as it needs to be. It was a rush to experience, and there were so many moving parts. But the whole time I was thinking, this is what it's like, this is what I've been missing, because in the almost calendar year I've been at that department, I'm a white cloud. It's often been joked about with me because every single box that would come in, that was a legitimate structure fire. And we don't get, we're not the FDNY. We're not Los Angeles or Chicago or Boston, where you're getting, a crap ton of working fires in a week. I mean, you talk about a city of 8 million people. It's 5 cities merged into one. So the boxes are through the roof. And it's not because the FDNY does a bad job. It's because the city's so big. We're a city of 55,000. So we get our share, but nothing to the degree that the bigger cities in this country get. or even like places like Dallas or Houston, right? Big cities that see a lot of action that way. Um, with us, it's about, maybe 20 to 30 good ones a year, sometimes a little bit more. New Haven, where I live, gets a lot because we're a bigger city. We're a city of 300,000. So naturally, you're going to see more legitimate fires. But us in West Haven, not so much. But I had missed all of them. They had come in at hours of the night that obviously I wasn't going to be there. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm long home by that point, or 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm knocked out cold. I'll find out about it when I wake up. And I'm like, what do I have to do to make sure I'm here for one? I'm due for one. When is it going to happen? And it's always when you least expect it, because it's funny how things, and guys in the chat, either on the PD side or the FD side that served or are still serving, this. It could be the quietest day. Nothing could be happening. It could be ho hum. And right when you think, looks like we're in for a nice, relaxing day, boom, that's when something happens, right when you're most relaxed, right when your mind is elsewhere, right when you're not even thinking about it. And all of a sudden, all hell's breaking loose, and you're running a million miles a minute, and it's just sheer adrenaline, and it's a rush and a half. And that was really that, William Cooney. Yeah, I mean, that was really that day. And it was fitting that it was on a February 29th, because here we are. And I think that day, our rescues had gone out on a couple medical calls. It was really just I can say this now in retrospect, it's a quiet day. It was a really, really slow, quiet day. The ambulances, went out, handled their medicals. They don't transport in most cases. So went out, assisted AMR, American Medical Response, with their calls. I think, if I remember correctly, we may have had an activated fire alarm call, which is nothing. Just go and reset the alarm. Really, just a standard day. I don't think there was a lull for a few hours where guys were just doing what they were doing. I was in my office banging away, doing what I got to do. Guys are working on different things around the firehouse, and before you know it, boom, we're at the end of the day, or I'm at the end of my day. I'm getting ready to go home, and a box alarm was the furthest thing from my mind. I'm thinking, all right, another fruitful day at work in the books. Time to go home. And then boom, that happened. And we were there for about a good hour and change, almost two. Like I said, the guys did a great job. Not just my district, but Allentown, West Shore, set up command operations, everything streamlined as it should. We had mutual aid coming in from Milford, which is, for those of you not familiar with Connecticut, West Haven is in fairly close proximity to the towns of Orange and Milford, Connecticut. So their fire departments, we border right there with them. Like literally, there are certain parts of the city where you take a footstep and you're in Milford, and then you take another step back and you're back in West Haven. And same thing with Orange. So Milford, which is a paid department, sent some mutual aid companies to help out, and they did, and they did. And New Haven came as well. So it was really it was a heck of a scene. Like I said, Pete, don't worry, it's all right. We'll figure it out. Just text me at my number, and we'll do a dry run so we could reschedule you. On Mike Colón, this is the Mike Colón Power Hour. Stay on for a little bit more. Probably stay on until about a little bit. Well, once we hit the hour mark, just spitballing. A little bit of a delay tonight with the guests. It happens. Nobody's at fault. Sometimes it happens, and we just roll with the punches. Kind of, it's becoming a signature of the show. We roll with the punches, which is good. And I'll save this nice suit for another day. But how would I phrase this? I don't do, like I said, do you want to see people's houses burning down? Of course not. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see anybody lose their property, because it's as somebody was saying on Getting Salty the other night, that's the worst moment of someone's life. They're losing their home, they're losing their property, they're losing their memories in that property. And sometimes people are losing their lives, and that's a heartbreaking thing. So I don't wish, let's get a box, because that means that somebody's life is about to get ruined, or somebody might even lose their life. So you never want to say that. And I've thought of it differently since that guest, Rico Phillips, said that. And certainly since, I went to that box where it's like, you know what, if it happens today, I just hope I get to go with the guys, and I get to see the guys do what they do best, and do a great job. Show why they take so much pride in doing what they do, and see them get to render a hand and make a bad situation just a little bit better through sound tactics, great operations, and great compassion for the people that they serve in their district and their city. So that's kind of the way that I view it. But for a first fire, that was no cheapie. It wasn't, it wasn't a car fire. It wasn't anything like, it wasn't a brush fire, which we'll get sometimes. Not to a crazy degree like California, but, a couple of bushes during the times of dry weather will catch fire, and I just put it out like that. Maybe not even stretch a line. Maybe you might even just use an extinguisher and it's done. That was a legit one. It was a third alarm, and it's something that I will never forget for as long as I live. February 29th, 2024. The Allingtown box alarm, third alarm. We'll see what happens. The winter you usually see more, but we're closing in on the end of this winter, so we haven't seen too many, but which is good. But we'll see what the summer brings, the spring and the summer. When the weather starts to get nicer, see if I'm around for any of those. There was one last summer in another district where it extended. It was a house fire, went to a second alarm, and that was a pretty good one that I missed. That I missed until I didn't miss this one. So yeah, and Matt Shirley, yeah, you went to a roaring brush fire. You were sending me pictures of a couple weeks ago. That went to a third alarm. So yeah, we'll see. A summer of riding with guys to these boxes. We'll see. Let's see. Sign me up. Like I said, don't want to see anybody's lives get ruined, but I definitely want to be with the guys. I definitely want to see them do their best work and do their best work they do. So I think the crew from my firehouse that went, I mentioned Florence Severin, Captain Andrew Bennett, firefighter Frank Payne. That was the crew on Truck 22 that I was with. And on Engine 21, Engine 25 was Figueroa, as I mentioned earlier, Lieutenant Figueroa, Analowski, Sedanowitz, and Decker. And then on Engine 21 was which came in on the second alarm assignment. Lieutenant John Drost, another very experienced fire officer. He's got 20 years on the job. Brian Sweeney, Jeremiah Carrier, and who was the fourth individual? It's escaping me at the moment, and I feel bad. I don't know who that fourth individual was. I'm trying to recall who was there. It may have been. God, I don't want to say the name because I might get it wrong. But those were the three guys I can recall that were on Engine 21 for the A shift that came in during our A shift. There was a fourth gentleman, and I'm forgetting his name, and I feel terrible about that. So I apologize to that fourth gentleman. I'll be kicking myself later because I know it was either Ryan Pickering or John DeFrancesco that were on the Engine 21. But what was funny about that is we had a recruit who just got sworn in, and that was his first day. He wasn't assigned to a shift yet. He was going through 2 weeks of in-house training. That was day one, and he caught a fire on his first day. So that kid's a black cloud. I say that lovingly. And Joe Morrow, great guy. So let's see what else is going on in the world of New York City. I covered the FDNY earlier. We'll go to the NYPD side, and on the NYPD side, this is particularly interesting. That there was a man who was shot on the subway. And this is where I could talk about this with Pete, because Pete was a former transit cop when I get him on, where I think, and I saw the video was wild, where, I guess they were fist fighting on a subway car, which is like, who has time for that? Like, in this economy, to borrow a line from, I think it was Barney Miller, I think, that said that, in this economy, like, who has time to fist fight? Like, dude, we all got places to go. Like, it's just, I don't have the energy for this. So whatever idiocy they were fighting about was a bigger guy against a shorter guy, and they started throwing hands, on the subway car, which is dumb enough, because getting into a fist fight is stupid, but getting into a fist fight on a moving subway car is even dumber because there's no balance there. But nevertheless, they went at it, and the guy, taller guy, the shorter guy's girlfriend came in and started poking at him. I think she was stabbing him with whatever she had. I don't know if she had a pocket knife. She had something. She was stabbing him in the back. Not like deep wounds, but like, she was poking at him. Which naturally, if you're getting stabbed and you're getting holes poked in your back by a sharp object, you don't exactly react well to that. And that gentleman apparently had a gun on him that he pulled out of his hoodie, and fight was on. Shorter guy got control of the gun and shot the taller guy. And that guy, last I heard, was in critical condition. And it created a whole big to do because you have all these searches going on, right? You have the state police there, you have the guard there, and whatnot. And we're not going to get into the whole, you know, controversial aspect of the discussion. That's for other places to do. But what I will say is, not that long ago, and I'm talking, listen, early 90s, when Bratton was chief of the transit police, you had cops there at the turnstile that would just stop and check somebody. Like even before 9/11, when subway security and naturally security everywhere in the city tightened up because of the tragedy of 9/11, everybody being on guard, like subway crime was virtually non existent because people were getting checked. Like, you pay your fare. If you don't pay your fare, cop stops you. And that's where you would find a gun on somebody that hopped the turnstile or anything else that they shouldn't have because 9 times out of 10, they can pay their fare. They just don't want to because they're trying to, stay off the system, stay off the grid, if you will. But that's a stupid way to approach it because naturally, at least back in the old days, you jump the turnstile, you're getting the cops' attention. If you want to stay off the grid, pay your fare and keep what you're doing hitting. But, most of these criminals aren't smart. And that guy, despite the fact that there's so many checks going on, was able to get that gun on the subway car. And even if he was trying to act in self-defense, guarantee you that gun probably wasn't registered. So it poses the question, transit police used to be kings of this back in the day, kings of this, where it was simple. Just put cops at the turnstile. They jump their fare. I mean, they jump the turnstile. Don't pay the fare. You stop them. Or you got decoys on the subway cars. And the NYPD took this method once they merged with the transit police in 1995, and you would have undercovers on these subway cars blending in with riders, riding point to point to different stops. Where if something got out of hand, even if nobody had a weapon, even if people were, having a confrontation, getting ready to come to blows, you had a cop there or two on that subway car that could just immediately put a stop to it. And that's how you were able to keep crime down. And it wasn't too long ago that I think as recently as 2018, there was no murders in the New York City subway. None. And unfortunately, you see people get pushed into trains, in front of trains. Situation like this where people are getting shot on the train. And you don't have enough personnel down there. Or if you do have enough personnel down there, they're not searching the way they ought to search because how do you miss that? How do you miss that? I'm like, especially nowadays where we have metal detectors, things that can pick up. I don't know if they have metal detectors in the subway, but we have metal detectors in most places that can pick up if you have something like, even if it's just like your keys, it'll sound off, right? So I don't know how they missed that. I wouldn't be able to tell you. But the ball was dropped there, and I just, if they're missing a gun, and here's what scares me. And this is why I don't want to take the subway, or if I do in New York City, I want to make sure I'm with the right people. If they missed a handgun, would they miss a bomb? Yeah, think about that. I don't want to think about that, but in today's day and age, you got to think about that. What else would they miss if they're not on top of their game? This is why it's very important. It's imperative to check because you can miss that gun and you miss that knife and somebody gets stabbed, or you miss those drugs, and then somebody's out there either selling drugs on the train or on their way to the destination to sell drugs. And if you interrupt that drug transaction, you stop a dealer there, you might, that might segue to a bigger investigation and more arrest. You never know. You have to be on top of your A game. But I go back to the same question. What if somebody's got an explosive device? It's happened in the subway before. Eddie Leary did it in 1994, did a firebomb. He had a firebomb on him, set it off. There were two guys from Hamas that were going to blow up the subway in 1997 in Brooklyn. So, but even then, like even with ghost guns, Matt, that's the thing. Like, wouldn't a metal detector pick it up though? Because it's a metallic thing. So I don't know. Like I don't know how it's able to get past. But then again, if you don't enforce things, you miss details like that, and not enforcing things, can really cost people their lives, either on a one-on-one scale, like if this gentleman ends up dying of his injuries at the hospital, or if he hasn't already, I haven't seen. If he's died, I hope he hasn't. I hope he's able to recover from his injuries, learn from this, learn from this moment in his life, and hopefully be a better person going forward, and not carry guns around on the subway or anywhere for that matter. They shouldn't be. And uses as an opportunity to change himself. But, if you look at a situation like this, again, 9 out of 10 active assailants also have IEDs on them. Yeah, that's true. If you look at a situation like this, if that guy was a terrorist and he had a bomb on him, if he was an Edward Leary type who wasn't a terrorist, just a guy that was looking to extort the transit system when he set off his firebomb in 1994, and the bomb goes off, it happened. Frank James, that crazy guy that drove to the subway and did that shooting slash, I think he set off some smoke bombs too. Miraculously didn't kill anybody. But if you're not on top of your game, you're going to have a situation. I hate to say it. Well, you'll have a version of the 93 Trade Center bombing happening in the subway system. 2017, a guy got an IED down there, and thankfully he was an idiot. He wasn't a very good terrorist, and he tried to set off a bomb. He ended up hurting himself. He didn't kill himself, but he injured himself pretty bad, and everybody kind of looked around like, okay. It was funny when you look at the video because naturally people were caught off guard, but after a while they're like, all right, and they just kind of started going about their day. But one of these days, you're going to get somebody who knows what they're doing. They don't. You're going to get somebody that understands completely how to, like a Ramsey Youssef back in the day, how to build these devices, how to hide these devices, down to the smallest detail. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not 10 steps ahead of them, it's going to get onto a subway car, it's going to go off, and you're going to have hundreds of people getting killed. You could have a situation like Madrid in 2004. That wasn't a subway attack, but that was an attack in which transportation hubs were used. The July 7th, 2005 London bombings. These are things you have to think about because if you don't, people are going to die. People are going to die. Innocent people that are just trying to go about their day are going to die. First responders that are responding to this incident, same thing. And you don't want to risk that if you don't have to. The city's always vulnerable, but I feel like it's really vulnerable now because the eye is being taken off the ball, I think. And when you're wrapped up in too many different things and you don't pay attention to detail, that's where you really set yourself up for disaster. And I think the city's setting itself up for a disaster there because that's when chaos strikes. But I saw that video and I'm just like, and here's another thing. I was talking about this with Lou Rafrano. The filming culture nowadays is just so disgusting because if you see, and this is a good point Lou brought up, and I concur 125% with him. If you see two people fighting, like let's say before the guy even pulled out his gun, and the smaller guy's girlfriend pulled out the little pocket knife she had, before anybody, they're just like swinging and fighting. Why is your first thought, take out the phone here and record this? Like, you know what I'm doing in that situation? I'm trying to get the heck off that subway car. I'm grabbing my stuff. I'm hitting the emergencies, whatever I got to hit. I want out of that subway car with the quickness. I am gone. I don't care if I'm lost. I don't care if I have to go up and pay $60 for a taxi, which, you kind of do, unfortunately, in New York City these days because taxis are not cheap. Life is not cheap, as I'm finding out as an adult. But I'd much rather do that than spend one more nanosecond in that subway car where clearly it's going down. The situation's not good. It's getting a little dangerous, getting a little too close for comfort. And the last thing you want to do is be present in a situation like that. But these dummies in today's day and age want to take out the phone and record it. For what? For what? Especially once he pulled out the gun. Like, you may get shot and you're crouching down filming instead of trying to get out. Like, I just don't understand where people's heads are. It's like, it's almost like you want to die. You want to get hurt. Because, it's growing up and seeing old movies, right? Godzilla attacks, or any other movie where something's going down in a major area, like those action movies where there's a fight scene. What are people trying to do? They're trying to get away. And it's sad watching those movies from 20, 30 years ago because I'm thinking to myself, people wouldn't be doing that now. They sure wouldn't be doing that now. They'd be going towards a scene with their phones, with their camera, and trying to document it for the purpose, not for a journalistic purpose, but just because they want to post it and go viral. And I think it's an incredibly dumb way to be. I think it's a ridiculous way to be. And that's how you set yourself up for getting hurt, if not killed. And you could avoid the situation. That's the sad part. It's not something, sometimes things happen in a flash of the moment and you're just in the wrong place or the wrong time. At the wrong time, I should say, and that's tragic. And then other times it's avoidable. It's avoidable. And you can get out of Dodge. And that's something our parents taught us, right? When you see danger or something that's dangerous, what do? You go the other way. Let the police handle it. Depending on the emergency, let the fire department handle it. And one lady is saying in the video, "Where's the NYPD?" To which I'm thinking to myself, and I told this to Lou, well, if you would stop recording, dummy, you could use that phone of yours for a productive reason and make the call for the police to come, to which they will promptly dispatch some officers to the scene. But no, you are too busy recording it and trying to go viral. So, it's just, there's Murphy's Law hard at work, and Murphy's an Irishman, which makes him extra, in certain situations, a little extra spiteful. And you're seeing that not just in New York City, but everywhere. Just like, stop filming, please. For all that is good, stop filming these incidents and use the brain matter that the good Lord above provided you with, and use a little thing called common sense. Common sense. It's not that hard, If you see that a man is pulling out a gun and he's very agitated, and that man is not a police officer, or even if he is a police officer and he's pointing the gun at a suspect, I'm still getting out of Dodge because I don't want to be there while that's going down. I'd rather be nice and safe. Why? Because I have common sense. Not a lot of it, but I have some. And when I feel bad about myself, I look at these morons that would rather film these things and get out of Dodge and feel much better. You're going to get yourself shot, if not stabbed, if not something else, because you're trying to win, not even a Pulitzer. You're just trying to get retweets and likes on it. And that's a recipe for disaster too. Especially if somebody's getting beat up or whatever, you don't step in to help if you can. I mean, why would you film that? Why? Is it human nature or just human stupidity? I don't know. And I'm not sure I want to. Well, anyway, we're at the hour mark, and that's enough of my dissertation. Peter, I will text you shortly, and we will schedule a dry run so that we can schedule you. I'm going to change the title on this. You're seeing it as episode 310. This is not going to be 310. This doesn't count. Much like the Buster Only thing, it doesn't count. So this is, we're going to just call it the Mike Colón. It's a bonus segment, the Mike Colón Power Hour. Thanks for hanging out with me. And coming up Friday, I have George Sickler, former NYPD scuba diver, former, also detective in the gun suppression unit in the Bronx as well. He was a Bronx cop most of his career, except for his stint in scuba, which is a citywide unit. So that'll be this Friday at 7 o'clock. And like I said, I'll let you know, but we may have a 3-show next week just because of the fact that I double booked Wednesday like a moron. So in the meantime, I'll keep you guys posted. Thanks for joining me. It's the Mike Colón Power Hour. And on behalf of, I shouldn't say that. On behalf of my lovely audience who is nice enough to spend an hour with me, I am Mike Colón, and we will see you next time. Have a good night, everybody, and thanks again.